Hi, I'm Jeannie. Welcome to Mimicraft, your home for all things creative and DIY on a budget. I make all the mistakes so you don't have to. Welcome Mimicraft family, and a special welcome to my newest subscribers, over 100 of you this week alone. If you haven't yet subscribed, please consider it. There's no obligation and it's a free way to help your girl out. Also, don't forget to like this video and click the bell icon so you can be notified every time a new Mimicraft video drops. Now, on with the project. I started out with a piece of scrap wood from my garage. I forgot to measure it. I want to say it's about 5 by 13 maybe, and used this color green paint. I painted all sides except for the very bottom. Next, I added this floral garden reindeer moss from Dollar Tree. I started by spreading glue all over the place. I just used regular white school glue. You can see some scissors there laying on the table. I finally got smart and used those to cut the moss apart a little bit more so it would go on a little bit better and wouldn't be so clumpy. I don't know why I have so much trouble staying in frame, so many apologies. Here you can see me squirting on just a ton of glue for that top part. I did spread it around with my fingers before I added on the rest of the moss. When I was done, I sealed it with hairspray. Probably should have used another sealer though. Next, I used 2 of these bunny garlands from Dollar Tree. I had to remove the jute twine because we're going to be gluing these bunnies together. First, I removed the tails. I saved them to put back on later. I sanded the edges of the paper so it wouldn't peek through when I glued the rabbits together. If you don't want to do the sanding, you're going to need to spackle in between the spaces to hide that. I used Dollar Tree's brand of wood glue, super glue wood glue, to glue these bunnies together. After putting the glue on, I spread it around with my fingers, and then I placed the bunnies paper side to paper side so that I would have the back side showing on both sides. You'll see in a minute. I made sure they were as even as I could possibly get them before I clamped them together. If you don't have any clamps, you could also use a heavy object to hold these together so that they glue up real nice. You can see I used some craft sticks so that the clamps wouldn't make marks on the rabbit itself. I used a heavy grit sandpaper to sand the edges down to make the rabbits as even as possible. This is pressed paper, and paper's made of wood, so sandpaper works very well on it. Now here I'm showing you that the surface of these bunnies, where those holes are, it's raised a little bit. So before you spackle them, you're going to want to flatten that out. I started out by cutting it down a little bit with a razor, and then after I did that, I should say with a box cutter, and then after that I used some sandpaper on them until they were smooth. This is what it looks like if you don't sand off the paper. There are some openings in between, so I probably would have done some spackling in here anyway. Here you can see I'm doing some more sanding all the way around. Now to apply the spackle. I get better results when I use some type of a putty knife. It seems to get down in there better. Here I am using the Dollar Tree spackle on the sides. Truthfully, wood filler works much better. It dries faster, it's easier to sand, and I'll probably be using that moving forward. I sanded all the spackle, after it was dry of course, with coarse sandpaper. I sealed all the surfaces with matte Mod Podge just to cut down on how many coats of paint I was going to need to use to cover this up. I used Waverly White chalk paint, and even with the Mod Podge sealer, this took a good 3 coats. I found free images of argyle and I downloaded them from the internet and then made them the right size using the program Canva. I have the free version and it worked just fine. Here I am cutting them into separate pieces, one color for each bunny. I placed the paper on top of the bunny and then gently pressed on the edges to get an image transferred to the paper so that I could cut it out in the shape that I wanted. It would have been just as easy to trace it with the pencil, but I was a little afraid of getting the pencil onto the bunny. I marked the neck and then I grabbed a paint bottle so that I could draw a perfect curve. I probably could have eyeballed it. You'll see that I eyeball it on the other bunnies. Then I cut it out. Again, I pressed down the side so I could make some markings for me to cut. Here I am trimming the sides. I used Mod Podge to attach the paper to the bunny. I used a pencil to mark where the front of the bunny ended so that I could put the back on in the same spot. I wanted the back of this bunny shirt to look like it was bunched up over the tail in the back, so I made this template. Here I am cutting it out. I glued the bunny tail back on the bunny for point of reference. I later took it off. For the rest of the back of the bunny's outfit, just watch the video. I use school glue to secure the edges of the folded part of the back. The rest I secured with Mod Podge. When it was dry, or at least I thought it was dry, I used a sharp knife to cut off the excess. It was still a little bit wet, so I got a little bit of crinkling. I traced the bunny's ears so I could make a template for the pink center. I folded it in half to cut it so that it would be symmetrical. And then I cut it. I traced it on the ear to give me a guide. I painted the inside of the ear with ballet slipper color chalk paint. It definitely took a minute to get it just right. On to the next bunny. Here I'm making a template. This is actually for the back because this bunny's going to have just pants and his pants are going to be slouched down just a little bit. I folded the paper to make his pants look like they were drooping a little bit. Tried it on, made a mark where it needed to be cut, and then cut it. Now when this template is folded, it serves as a template for the front. Using this template, I cut out the bunny's pants. I used the template to mark where the fold needed to be. I put on his pants with glue. I hope I never need to do that. For the back, I glued the fold before I glued the pants onto the bunny. I pushed the middle down a little bit to try to make it look like they were baggy. I gave the last bunny a top and bottom. I traced the body, front and back, made a neckline, and then cut the pieces in two, made them a little bit shorter so that it would look like his belly was sticking out and that a little bit of his back was sticking out. I glued it on with regular glue. This is the back, and you can see I finally put the tail on. This is the back of all three. I did decide to seal all of these with Mod Podge, so took the tails off one more time and sealed them up. For the cheeks, I had a package of these really tiny pom-poms, so I decided that's what I would use for that. I wanted to make a nose, but a pom-pom didn't look right, so what I did is I took a cotton ball and just pulled off a real little bit of it and rolled it up into a real tiny ball in the palm of my hand. I made 3 the same size. To make the noses pink, I took a little bit of chalk paint, put some in my hand, and then just rolled those little cotton balls around in it until they were completely covered. Those black dots you see in the background are going to be bunny eyes. I'll show you that in a minute. Next, I glued the cheeks together and then glued the nose onto the cheeks. I'm using a fine tip glue gun. If you don't have one of these, you're probably going to want to use regular glue and just be patient. I decided where I wanted the nose to be, and then I glued it, hot glued it I should say, to the bunny's face. I made marks with a pencil where I wanted the eyes to go. For the eyes, I took some black acrylic paint and I just put a bunch of different sized dots on my silicone mat. If you don't have a silicone mat, you're going to have to do this on probably parchment paper or glass. Anyway, I just kept putting out dots in hopes that they would be very round, and they were, and the same size. When the dots were most of the way dry but wet underneath, I just peeled them up. You can see I'm using this little Dollar Tree tool and placed them right where those marks are. The wet paint underneath is what adheres it to the rabbit. If you allow the dots to completely dry, then you can attach them with some Mod Podge. Now it's time to make some golf clubs. I took this tiny little bead and I filled it with some spackle, the holes, and waited for it to dry. Next I took a wood skewer for the shaft of the golf club. I measured it out to about 2 1/4, which ends up being way too big. It should have been about half that. I cut the end off with some miter shears on an angle, but you could have just as easily used a pair of scissors or a craft knife. And then I used some sandpaper to smooth it off and get it nice and flat. It'll give you a really good gluing surface. And then I would suggest using wood glue or maybe E6000. I, for video purposes, glued the bead onto the end of this with hot glue, but struggled to keep it together. I painted the little golf club with some silver rub and buff. Now, I forgot I had these. These are dog nail clippers from Dollar Tree, and I use those to make the golf club much shorter. I used coarse sandpaper to bevel the edge of the golf club that was going to be attached to the rabbit. Now, of course, bunnies don't use golf balls, they use wooden eggs. These are from Dollar Tree. I used these 3 colors mixed with white to paint the eggs. My favorite way to paint round objects like this is to use double-sided tape to keep them from rolling around. Time to put this together. I decided to put the yellow bunny in the middle, and I used a real heavy amount of hot glue and just held them in place. This is where I place the other bunnies. Next, I attached their golf clubs. You can see me using hot glue. Again, you're going to probably want to use something stronger. I actually added a little hot glue to the bottom as well, and that made it more stable. You can also see that I placed the eggs all around where I'd like to glue them. And here I am attaching the eggs. And this is how it turned out. I'm excited to use this as a centerpiece for Easter. What's really nice about it is there's a front and back, and everybody at the table has a little something to look at. And it's so cute. Think of how many different ways this could be made with all different kinds of activities that the bunnies could be doing. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to leave a comment for me. How would you use this set? Did you like what you saw today? Until the next one, bye!